Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to look at some recent sales for mint on card vintage Star Wars items, mainly US Kenner cards, a few Palitoy Tri-Logos. Most of these are later ESB and Return of the Jedi Tri-Logos, as I mentioned, a couple of Power of the Force, and most of these are kind of mid-range, mid-grade, budget-friendly, collector-friendly type items. Starting off with this 21 back A R2-D2 that was listed by a seller, LM Lane. I bought from this seller in the past, really great seller. This one was not perfect by any means, but just giving you a nice low condition, not low, but collector grade condition 21 back R2, which is not the easiest thing to find. You don't really see a lot of 21 back R2s that pop up on eBay. This one did have some crunching by the stem of the blister, and again, not perfect, just showing you a nice example to put inside a sliding acrylic case for your collection room. And this one sold in an auction for $416, which is more than fair for a sealed mint on card early Star Wars card for R2. This seller, Jada34, had a bunch of kind of mostly mid-grade mint on cards that he sold at auction, and we're going to start off with a few ESBs and then dig into some Return of the Jedi. This was a yellowed blister 47 back Forlom offer for Ben Kenobi. Overall pretty decent shape, just some light creasing to the card, obviously yellowed blister. 408 on that one. I feel like clear blister in really high grade shape Ben Kenobis on an ESB card back, they are really expensive. You don't see them that often, and when they do pop up, they are pretty pricey for an ESB Obi-Wan. I'm talking really high-grade examples. They tend to go for kind of similar money to what a Darth Vader on an ESB card back would go for, maybe slightly lower than that. But this was a nice mid-grade example that sold for $408. We had the Death Squad Commander, similar story. This was a punched example with a slightly yellowed blister that sold for $338. Another one that on an ESB card back can be pretty desirable, but that one did sell. That one was in a little better shape, I think. I think that one probably grade about a 75 plus, maybe a low 80 for $338. And then on to the 48 backs with the Revenge of the Jedi offer. This was a 48C for the Imperial Commander. Again, a yellowed blister, so not the super high grade examples. Very, very reasonably priced at $338. Unpunched, no price sticker on that one. That one was in pretty clean condition overall, just unfortunately had the yellowed blister. This one seemed like it went a little higher than I would have expected. This was a yellowed blister 65C for the Emperor offer, and this was a Forlom, but it was yellowed blister. It wasn't super high, like a rare thing. I mean, this is a fairly common Return of the Jedi 65 back, and it sold for $404, which, maybe if that had been a clear blister, I could potentially see it at that price, but that number seemed maybe a little higher than I was expecting personally. Next up, another one that went for a big number, and this one, don't be deceived, this was not a clear blister, This one had a yellow blister that you can see there, but it was certainly a very clean, high-grade example otherwise for the TIE Fighter palette. This was a 65 back A, unpunched, no price sticker, very clean. Okay, I admit that. You could see there on the top portion of the seal that it had some rippling there. That was just like I call that like an overheating. Oftentimes when they were sealing these cards, sometimes they would overheat it, and it would cause that rippling effect around the seal. You can see that little wave at the very top, and then even on the left-hand side. But again, $610 seems like a lot of money to me. That just seems way too high. Admittedly, probably an 80 plus grade, maybe an 80 grade. They're probably going to ding you for that heat seal issue on the card. But, for a clear blister, I could potentially see going that high. But even a clear blister, I think, for that particular card back seems extremely high at $610. This one was a Stormtrooper 65 back B. And this one, again, had a yellowed blister, unpunched, no price ticker. And that one sold for $430. I would argue that was probably a better deal than either the Forlom or the TIE Fighter palette. That one seems like a much better deal to me. Mainly because, for me anyway, this is my personal opinion, it's about aesthetics, right? When the Return of the Jedi Stormtrooper blisters yellow, it really blends in fairly nicely with the card art. So it doesn't look nearly as bad when it's not, heavily yellowed. If it's just lightly, moderately yellowed like this, because of the colors on the card back, it kind of blends in a little bit more. So to me, $430 was a better deal than either the TIE Pilot or the Forlom. That's just my personal opinion, of course. The Zuckuss sold for $127.50. That was a pretty good deal for the 65C with the Emperor offer. Heavily yellowed, but overall pretty clean card. Just some light edge wear to it. Another 65C for Ben Kenobi. That one sold for $391. Much more heavy yellowing to the blister. Punched example with a price sticker, but $391 on that one. The R5D4, again, anytime you get one of these on the Return of the Jedi card back, even yellowed blister like this, they do command a pretty significant premium. And this one was very clean, probably about an 80 grade. Punched example, that sold for $410. So the clear blister Return of the Jedis, they do go for a lot of money. They do go for a lot of money. And this yellowed blister shows that, given that it sold for $410. Next up, this one, is what I was talking about in another market update, where if you see a clear blister Darth Vader Return of the Jedi, always look at the back. And you can see very clearly that this back, you see how matte the finish is for the yellow portion? So this tells you that this is a made in Mexico for the U.S. market. Now, this Anakin sticker that goes over top, it says figures made in Hong Kong. That is just because that's just related to the offer sticker, okay? So if this one if this was just a 77A without that offer sticker, you would see below there, it would be a made in Mexico. And the reason you can tell is because it's such a matte finish to the back. So look at the back of this one, and then look at it versus a typical U.S. card, and see how much brighter it is. So that's how you look for the made in Mexicos, if they have offer stickers, and the offer stickers cover up the fact that it's a made in Mexico. And the other big tell will be that the blister is usually clear. Very rarely do made in Mexico for the U.S. market card backs have blisters that yellow. And so this one was not perfect, obviously. It had a lot of wear to the card. That still sold at $306 because it's clear blister and it's a Lily Letty inside the blister. And that, you can tell on the Darth Vader because it's got that longer neck. It's subtle, but if you look at it versus like a standard Hong Kong Darth Vader, you'll see that the neck is maybe a little bit more elongated, and that's usually a telltale sign. And also the saber tip is pretty thick there, so that's what she said. But that's definitely a Lily Letty Darth Vader made in Mexico, as you can tell by that matte finish to the card back. Next up was a 77 back A Boba Fett. $13.75 on that one. Big number there. This one, I think, was a Taiwan. It was a Taiwan 77 back A. And very clean condition, $13.75. That gives you a pretty reasonable number to aim for right now for a mint on card Return of the Jedi Boba Fett in 80-ish grade condition. $13.75 on that one. And I've got a lower grade example that I'll show you here in a second for a Boba Fett Return of the Jedi. And then another big one that sold from this auction lot was a 77 back A Luke Skywalker, obviously the alternate image gunner card. We've seen a ton of these lately, and there was yet another one that popped up. This one sold for $17.75, and again, probably in about 75 plus, maybe 80 grade if the graders are feeling generous. It's got a little bit of edge wear to the bottom of the card that would probably hold it back just a little bit. But I think it's probably a 75, 80, or 85 for the blister, and then an 80 or 85 for the figure. And it has a decent chance at an overall 80 grade yellow blister. So $17.75 on that one. Another big one was this one. This one was the Emperor's Royal Guard. It sold for $676. AFA 80. Now, again, this one was labeled clear blister, and you can see there that it is starting to yellow. So buy the figure, not the grade, right? We talk about this all the time, and we see it all the time, not only on eBay, but on Hakes or on Heritage and some of these other big golden. A lot of these that have been graded a long time ago, especially Return of the Jedi cards, they do yellow after grading. And this one's only subtle. It's a very subtle yellowing to it. It's not much, but it has yellowed a little bit. overall 80 grade, and it sold for $676. Now, do I think that's a fair price given that it's slightly yellowed? Probably about right. It's the ERG unpunched, no price sticker in high grade with that little yellowing on a 77 back, and most 77 backs do yellow over time. They just yellow a lot more than what this one has been. So I can understand paying a slight premium just given the very faint yellowing to this one. But, again, just be careful and don't overpay for it. But I don't think that 676 number is out of the realm. I think if it was a true clear blister, it would probably be significantly higher. It'd probably be closer to $800 or $900 in an auction. But I think that this one was slightly discounted just given the fact that it is starting to yellow just a little bit. Next up, a 79 back for Han trench coat. This was the plain lapel version. Pretty high grade example, $167.50. Again, very fair number, very reasonable price, very much a fair market value number for a fairly common card back. And then this seller had a number of very nice items, starting off with this 41 back solid dome R2D2. To my knowledge, this is the last card back where the solid dome R2D2 was available before they switched over to the 45 back with the sensor scope R2D2. So this one is very, very desirable, unpunched, no price sticker. He got listed for $690, and I thought that was a very fair number. This is a high grade example, probably grades at least an 80, potentially an 80 plus, somewhere in that ballpark. But that was a very fair number given what an already graded example of this would sell for. I think an AFA 80, if all else was equal and this was already graded AFA 80, probably $900 to $1,000 pretty easily. So great deal on that. I sent that out to my Patreons in a buy it now alert, and somebody did pick that up. So congrats to you on that one. Next up is a 48 back Return of the Jedi. So this is that transition-free 9-num offer for C-3PO removal of limbs, clear blister for $228.95. Now, it was not perfect. It had some issues. Obviously, you can see a tear on probably a cut on the back of the card from when they opened the sealed case originally back at retail, would be my guess. But that one, that's about as cheap as it gets. $229 for a transition card, still clear blister. Obviously not perfect, but a really nice way to fill a hole with a mid-grade example. Next up, some tri-logos. This one was the Amanaman. I thought this was a great deal. $450 was the list price, best offer accepted. I forgot to look it up what it sold for, but for a Amanaman tri-logo, we've seen some AFA 85s go over $1,000 that CIB had at auction. So I sent this one out to my Patreons. I don't know if one of them bought it or not, but you figure a loose, complete Amanaman that's near mint is $300 at least. And this was listed for $450 for a mint on card tri-logo Amanaman. So I thought that was a great price on that. Next up was the Ewoks Wicket W. Warwick. This was a very clean example. Another made in Mexico item. You can see down there below the proof of purchase figure made in Mexico. Warwick and Wicket W. Warwick and Logray from the Ewoks cartoon line were made in the Mexico Lily Letty Market factory. The factory down in Mexico, the Lily Letty factory. God, I cannot talk. I'm running like 4 hours of sleep, folks. Give me a break. This one sold for big money too, $912. That's the biggest number I've seen for a Wicket mint on card in a while, but it was an unpunched example, really clean, probably grades really highly, probably about an 80 plus or maybe potentially even an 85, so I can understand it. I mean, I've seen just that loose complete figure go for $600 on Facebook, so $912 for the condition of that particular example is probably be about right, but we just haven't seen one that clean sell in a while, so I thought that was good. Next up was an AFA 80 R2D2 pop-up lightsaber mint on card, $1105 in an auction. That's a pretty decent deal there, just given that a loose complete one can go for what, $600-700 minimum in that kind of condition. So for an AFA 80 mint on card, $1105, great deal. And then Toy Scout had a bunch of really nice items at auction that sold for great prices. This 32B Lando was an AFA 80 clear blister. That one sold for $360. Great deal there. And then he had a 47 back Forlom Hammerhead clear blister, unpunched, no price sticker, very high grade overall. I don't see much wrong with this one at all. This one would grade pretty well, at least an 80 grade. That one sold for $462. This one just had light yellowing, but this was a 65 back A for Yoda. It's weird. The Yoda was kind of like crunched down, like, his waist, the legs had kind of bent down. But the stem on it was really clean, obviously light yellowing, but probably a 75 plus or an 80 grade at least. And that one sold for $456. Another really good price there. They had a 65 back A Han Solo, unpunched, no price sticker, obviously yellowing to the blister. That sold for $610. Again, probably be about right. A clear blister goes $900 to $1,000 all day long in this kind of condition. Here was a big one. This one was the Blue Saber Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. This was obviously the 65 back B, which I think is the only mint on card that came on the U.S. market. The 65B, to my knowledge, again, I'm not an expert on Luke Jedis, but this is the only one where the blue lightsaber came in for the Hong Kong. Obviously, the tri-logos and maybe some of the Palatoys had it with the no COO figure packed inside, but this is the Hong Kong blue lightsaber, unpunched, no price sticker, $1,125. We've seen some graded examples go for $1,400 to $1,600, so that number feels about right for about an 80 grade, 80 plus grade. And then here was a Boba Fett. As I mentioned earlier, this is the other Boba Fett I wanted to talk about, another Taiwan. This one did have, some blister issues. So the seller was good enough to show that it's not perfect, right? So this one sold for $950. And we saw the other one that was a fairly high grade example that sold at $1,375. That one was the desert scene. This is obviously the original card back image. But that one sold at $950. So depending on how much you want to spend and the condition and things like that, that gives you two price targets. And then finally was this AFA 80 Han Solo in carbonite. That one sold for $870. Big number there, but it was unpunched, no price sticker, clear blister, really clean. Chef's kiss. $870 was the final sales price on that. So anyway, just some more mint on card sales for those of you out there looking. I hope this helped with giving you a good price target to aim for in case you were looking for any of these particular characters. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.